in the last lesson, we managed to figure out how to get the turtle to move with a key press. And that's with every press of the up key, the turtle moves further towards north. Now, the next task is to create and move the cars. The cars need to move from right to left, and they need to be randomly generated along the y-axis here. So they need to be generated right to the right edge of the screen, and they can appear anywhere along this line, and then they're going to move automatically towards the left at a fixed pace. Each of these cars, you can see, are going to be turtles, and they're going to be 20 by 40 pixels. So we mentioned that by default, every turtle that we create is 20 by 20 pixels. So we'll need to stretch the turtle to make it into this shape. Now that we are concerned with the cars, let's create our code inside the car manager. The first thing we'll need to do is to import the turtle class from the turtle module, and our car manager is going to have a init where we create all of our cars. So I'm going to create a list called all cars, and it's going to start out being an empty list. Now, at some point, our main.py is going to call a function from the car manager called createCars. And this method is going to create a random car somewhere along the y-axis with a given dimension. Each of these cars, so let's call it a new car, is going to be a turtle object, and it's going to be created in a square shape. Now, in addition, we're going to have to change the dimensions of this turtle, and we're going to use that method that we used before, which is this one, shape size. Now, what shape size allows us to do, if you remember, is it allows us to stretch our turtle along the width and along the length. So we want the width to be double the original size, so 2 times 20 pixels is 40 pixels. And the length, we don't want to be stretched at all. So we're going to say it's 1 times the original length. In addition, our new car is not going to draw, so we're going to get it to pen up. And also, our new car is going to have a random color. So we can set the color, and then we can import the random module so that we can use one of these colors in this list. And we can say random.choice, and then pass in our list of colors from this colors constant. Finally, we're going to define where it's going to go on the screen. To do that, we need to define a random Y position. So this again is going to be created from the random module, and we're going to use the randint. And then we're going to define somewhere along this y-axis, which is the vertical, somewhere for this car to be generated at. So we know that our screen is 600 by 600. So that means the y-axis goes from positive 300 to negative 300. But we don't want the car to be generated all the way to the edge, because remember, the turtle needs a bit of starting space and also a bit of ending space. So you can play around with this number, but I've ended up going with minus 250 to positive 250. This means that we get a good range in the middle of the screen, and that the turtle has a bit of empty space at the beginning and also at the end when it needs to move across. So now that we've defined our random Y, we can tell our new car to go to the X position, which is going to be the very edge of the right screen. So that's going to be positive 300 right to the edge. And then the Y position is going to be the random Y that we just created. And finally, once we've created our new car, we're going to append it to our list of all cars, which of course, because it's defined in a class, it has to have the self in front of it. So self.allcars.append, and then we're going to append this new car that we've just created. Now, coming back to our main.py, let's create our car manager from the car manager class, and then we're going to use it inside our game loop here so that on every refresh of the screen, every 0.1 seconds, we're going to get the car manager to create a new car. And strictly, this probably shouldn't be plural because each time we call this method, it only creates one new car. So let's change that method so that it only creates one car, but it creates one car every 0.1 seconds. Now, at this point in time, if we run our code, you'll actually see nothing happen because the cars are being created at this right edge here, and it's not yet visible on the screen. To make it visible, we have to move our cars across the screen. Let's create another method which we'll call moveCars, because this method is going to go through our list of cars, so for car in self.allCars, and for each of those cars, it's going to move it towards the left by the move distance that we've defined up here. So to do that, all we need is to get the car to move backwards by the starting move distance. Now it's going to loop through our list of all cars that were created, and then for each of the cars, it's going to move it backwards by 5 paces. So now, in addition to getting the car manager to create a new car on every refresh of the game loop, we're also going to get it to move all of the cars by 5 paces. Let's hit run now, and you should see that we've got our cars being generated, but notice how I've made a slight error in the stretch. Instead of stretching it along the length, I've stretched it along the width, and this is why we've got this random array of shapes moving. So let's go back to our car manager and change the width to stretch by 1 and stretch the length by 2. So now if we rerun our code, you can see the cars are now the right shape, a rectangle that looks like it's moving to the left. Now notice how in my case, the cars are being generated far too frequently. We've got way too many cars and it's impossible for our turtle to cross the road. So we need to figure out a way of how we can reduce the number of cars that are being made. Instead of creating a car every 0.1 seconds at every refresh of the game, we need to slow this down a little bit. And one way we can do this is by using a random number. Let's say that we create a random chance, which is going to be a 1 in 6 chance. So it's almost like throwing a dice. If you get a 1 on the dice, then we create a card. We can do this by getting hold of our random module, creating a random int between 1 and 6. And then we can say that if the random chance is equal to 1, then and only then do we actually create a new car. So this basically ensures that every 6 times the while loop runs, a new car will be generated. Now it's not going to be precisely every 6 times because there's some degree of chance involved, but notice when we run our program now, see how the cars are now being created much less frequently, and we've actually got some space for our turtle to cross. So that is how we create and move our cars across the screen and make sure that they don't occur so frequently that our turtle has no chance of crossing the road. I hope this walkthrough was helpful. Don't worry if your code doesn't look the same as mine. It doesn't have to. What matters is if you're able to achieve the desired functionality of the game. There are a million different ways that you can solve this problem, and as long as it works, whatever way you choose will be the best way.